President Biden, veterans, and world leaders are in France today, marking 80 years since D-Day. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in what became a critical turning point in World War II.
That's right. We are looking at legends here. That massive military operation eventually led to the defeat of Nazi Germany nearly a year later. President Biden gave a speech in Normandy earlier to honor the bravery of those soldiers.
The men who fought here became heroes, not because they were the strongest or toughest or fiercest, although they were, but because they were given an audacious mission, knowing, every one of them knew, the probability of dying was real. But they did it anyway.
CBS Morning's co-host Tony Dokoupil joins us now from Normandy, France. Tony, we were just listening to a bit of the president's speech. You listened to the whole thing. What really stood out for you there?
Well, the president is here to recommit America to the alliance that came out of World War II. It's sometimes said that World War II and the veterans who stormed the beaches of D-Day gave us our world, and that is true as a literal and practical reality. The United Nations came out of World War II, the International Monetary Fund came out of World War II, and importantly, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, came out of World War II. And Secretary of State Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and then the president himself each made the point that it is NATO and that alliance, that mutual defense pact that keeps the world safe and less violent than it would be otherwise. And that was really the president's message here, particularly at this time, because on this 80th anniversary, it's the first anniversary where you have a large ground war in Europe since World War II, and that, of course, is the conflict in Ukraine. The added drama of just overnight reports surfacing that American weapons are being used by Ukraine now inside Russia for the first time after those rules were loosened by President Biden. The Secretary of State did not confirm that with me, but we had a conversation, and I'll play a clip of it for you in just a moment, where I asked him to complete this sentence at one point: without America, what? And he said the world would be a more violent and a more chaotic place. So the president's message and his message overlap. Let's hear a little bit of my interview with the Secretary of State.
After 2 world wars, we wanted to do everything possible to make sure that there wouldn't be a third. Yeah. And at the heart of that is an international order, an understanding that one country can't simply violate the territory of another by force, change its borders by force, seize its land, try to dominate its future. Yeah. If we don't stand up for those rules in our time, then we risk seeing what happened in the time that we're commemorating today.
So the reason that President Biden, of course, that President Biden and the administration is making these points right now is because, in fact, the polling back in America, and I know that the politics ends at the water's edge, but the opinions don't. 2/3 of Americans, according to Gallup, are not approving of the U.S.'s role in the world. They don't like something about the foreign policy being enacted. It's a low point not reached since the Trump administration. So there's a larger problem here about what America should be doing to contain the chaos of the world, whether they're doing too much, creating more harm than good, spending too much money. All of these ideas are in the air, even as we honor and try to hold on to the memories, the fast receding memories of this D-Day generation, now with just 31 D-Day veterans in attendance for this anniversary, likely the final one where their presence, their living presence, will be here.
It's such an important commemoration today, Tony, but also the point you just made about how viewers who are watching this will receive the idea that they will essentially, through their taxpayer funds, continue funding operations in Europe while they experience inflation and other things in their lives. I know President Biden will have a key meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during his trip. What do we expect to come out of that meeting, considering to some extent Biden's offerings and hands are tied?
Well, you know, the president has said, and he said in his speech today, that he will not walk away. We, NATO, in his words, will not walk away from Ukraine and not let bullies, a reference to Vladimir Putin, have their will. That was really the post-World War II takeaway, was the idea that never again are we going to allow, in that case, Japan and Germany, to take other countries by force. That's the bully in that scenario. And so he's recommitting America and NATO and our tax dollars to making sure Putin, his war, ends in Ukraine and ends poorly for him.
All right, Tony, thank you. And thank you for helping to keep these memories very much alive.